Hello and welcome to BD episode 4. There's hundreds of people around the world who've joined us today to hear from Howard Kennedy and from Barbara and Daryl, who I'll introduce in a moment. As I've been thinking about this over recent weeks, these are the people, you are one of them, the senior leaders of BD and marketing and professional firms who are going to be responsible for driving the economy as we come out of this lockdown. So I hope you find these sessions really useful. We've designed them so that you hear directly from your peers who are running the BD and marketing in other professional firms, and we've designed it to be quick and to shoot from the hip. So how it'll run today, as previous weeks, we'll have a short discussion, approximately 10 minutes, and then a question and answer session. Some of you have submitted questions in advance. There's also the ability to do so at the foot of your screen where it says Q&A. We'll also be hosting a poll during the session, and I'll ask Daryl and Barbara to reflect on the results of that poll as we go. So one final thing as well, just for privacy, this is all being recorded and will be available on YouTube from tomorrow. So today, we welcome Daryl Atkinson and Barbara Ashley from Howard Kennedy. It's a firm of 150 lawyers and one of the few in the UK to have a really significant offering in both private wealth and commercial. Daryl is Director of BD and Marketing there, and Barbara is the Head of Business Development. Both have outstanding professional experience. I've met them both over the last 10 to 12 years, a number of times. And you'll see today that they really bring to life this straightforward approach that Howard Kennedy is so proud of. So welcome both. Thank you very much for dialing in. Daryl, if I may start by asking you a question, please. When I think of Howard Kennedy in recent years, one of the first things I picture is a stunning location overlooking the Thames and Tower Bridge. And how important is it for you to have that office, to work together in it, and also to host clients in it?
Yeah, well, thank you. We like the office too, and we enjoy working there, and we enjoy bringing clients and contacts there too. Having a nice place to work is really important, we think, for encouraging people. Part of our employer brand, in a way, in that people like to be there, and I think clients enjoy coming there too. Clearly, things have changed now, and we're not going to be there for some time. So that's been a real challenge for us in thinking about, well, how do we carry on with providing the sort of client experience that they've enjoyed in coming to the office. They're tricky.
Yes, yeah, it is. I'm sure. One of the things I was surprised when I first started working with you was through a global network of law firms. I realized that a quarter, if not more, of your work comes from overseas and the international referrals. Yeah. Do you think this is going to rise or fall post-COVID?
I think it will affect us in different ways. Clearly, our work is dependent on the economic activity of our clients, and those will be affected differently. There's clearly, we have a significant real estate offering, and that's going to be difficult again because of the downturn in the real estate market that I think everyone is suffering. So that activity is maybe likely to reduce, and we used to enjoy a lot of international investment into the UK, and often it would include a real estate component. Where we see there's real opportunity is around litigation work, international arbitration work that is likely, unfortunately, to we think increase. So again, having that network that we do of law firms around the world that we enjoy really good relationships with, I think we can expect that to increase. Yeah.
Good. And if I may ask you, Barbara, as well, one of the things we've heard from other firms as we go through this, and as I talk to clients over the last 2 months, is that they've been embracing virtual seminars, and there's some big upsides to that. So something similar to what we've done today, but also smaller group discussions and round tables. Is that something you're doing at Howard Kennedy? And if so, what are the pros and cons as you do that?
Yeah, I think like most firms, we've been embracing virtual events. I think one of the challenges for us is that the nature of the organisation process is different. So although you can organise them in theory much quicker, the best practice in terms of timelines and so on is much shorter. Is actually much more intense as an experience for the presenters and the teams organising them. So we have to factor that in, and we're learning. I think everybody is learning as they go, and there's so many factors there are more factors outside your control, because instead of being in a space you have control over, like your own offices or a third-party venue, you're effectively split into the number of venues that you have speakers. And you wouldn't ordinarily have a baby or a cat or something in the background of a panel speaker, and those are all things that you can see. And then there's things like noise quality with connectivity issues and things like that. One of the big pluses for us is the opportunity it's created to expand our audience beyond where we might physically have been able to accommodate, and I think that's something that a lot of people have benefited from, and we're no different.
And by that, Barbara, do you mean you can, rather than having just 80 people in a room, you can have unlimited numbers, or do you mean proximity is not so important anymore?
Well, I think they're all true. So when I think at most of us, when we are organising events, that we have to focus on the core audience that we're trying to engage with. And so you might make decisions on your list, for example, that although they might be a relevant audience for you, like your peer group or future employees, so students, for example, law students, are constantly being, whittled off mailing lists by digital managers across legal services because they're not seen as a, not immediately anyway, a relevant audience for events. And so what would dilute the experience of a GC sitting next to a law student in real life actually isn't relevant in a webinar context. So you can open your doors far wider. And also, if the content of the event is more sensitive, where people might not feel comfortable listening to the content in the space, so it could be sort of employment or really contentious issues, then that benefits from having the ability to do it virtually.
Yes, of course. I suppose some of the family work you do as well, and the private wealth work, that would also benefit from that privacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's been interesting, just the I think the opportunity that this change in the way that we're delivering our events, delivering them virtually, in that we've suddenly got this whole audience who's now listening to our content that we don't know. Yeah. So we're capturing these people. These are new relationships to us, albeit a bit of a tenuous relationship in that we've met them across a webinar. But that's, we now got to think about, well, what do we do with all this new inbound top of funnel information? How do we capture that? How do we assign them to someone to follow up? How do we then move them down the funnel? Yes. So this is a whole new BD opportunity for us, which I think this situation has highlighted.
Yes, and I hear some firms, as you'd expect, are refocusing or retraining people towards that sort of digital management of data and viewers and subscribers, and maybe away from more of the traditional event space where possible. Well, one of the other challenges people in your position have, and this was something I picked up from a GRIST survey last week, where they did a quick snapshot of 75 senior BD and marketing people across the UK in the profession. So not just law, also management consultancy, accountancy, property. And three of the biggest challenges that came out of that, I'm going to share with you and then ask what sort of impact that's having for Howard Kennedy, if you're happy to share. The biggest thing, 59% reported their biggest challenge was a budget freeze, and of those, it was a really budget freeze and budget cut. Sorry, within that was 59%. 53% talked about the difficulty of home working, and just under half talked about the difficulty of managing the team while some staff are furloughed. May I begin with you, Barbara? Is that how are you you know, it's no secret that all firms are feeling the pinch at the moment. How are you practically coping with the challenges from that?
Well, and apologies, by the way, if there's any background noise. I live on a hill, and so when people are trying to turn the corner, sometimes you get a bit of background noise on the old exhaust if people are struggling. We've gone through an exercise of looking at work allocation, so focusing the team on where they are best placed to deliver what is the activity that's going to drive most value, because the emphasis has shifted. There's less of because people are inherently at home, there's not going to be the opportunity for the everyday kind of business development with, you know, collateral and all that kind of stuff that people are used to, and everything is more one-to-one. But we're trying to so the actual activity they're advising on has changed, although things like pitches, the volumes and stuff are the same. I've been through an exercise of looking at the as well as the outputs of the team, but which groups are the ones that are going to drive the most growth and revenue. So there's been a shift, for example, potentially away from some of the real estate investment work onto dispute resolution, business recovery and reconstruction, employment, those teams that are busier. Although they are busier, you know, across the board than I'd expect. Or might have expected. Daryl, do you want to just say a little bit about the sort of the cost management element that we've gone through in terms of the resourcing?
So we, like many firms, I think, are looking to manage our cost base carefully, and that unfortunately has led to time reduction. So a 4-day week is now normal for most of the staff. So that's challenging in itself, in that the partners, whilst the partners are equally taking a hit on their drawings, are working a 5-day week, whereas our team and the other teams are on a 4-day week. So again, we've got the same size team, they've got less time available. So the challenge there is how do we meet the demands of what is now an increased level of marketing activity, as people, you know, looking to develop their practices where things are under threat. So we've got, you know, real time management problems and trying to manage expectations as well. I think that's an important thing for us with the partners. It is for them to understand that we cannot continue to deliver a 100% service on 80% time. That's just not sustainable. So some things have to give, which is challenging. Budgets have been reduced again, which is I think a right and proper and a prudent response. And part of that's okay, because certainly for the first few months, we're not going to be doing anything like the international travel, the hospitality, and lots of the major events that we're involved with in a sponsorship capacity just aren't going to happen. So we can absorb quite a bit of that change and reduction in budgets. And then we've got to think, I think, cleverly about how we offer alternatives to the normal diet of BD and marketing stuff that we used to be doing before, and deliver it for less. Yes.
Okay,
and
thanks.
You've got to be pragmatic. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you just have to be pragmatic, and I did the work allocation based on kind of a proportional representation model, and we're just going to have to see how it goes and continue to manage the expectations of the partners. But one of the things I've been really keen on is, because the team are so committed, and they've really risen to this challenge, they've been really flexible, and they've been universally impressive. Is trying to make sure that their well-being is also being managed, that they're not drowning, and that sort of, because we're going to have a bit of a bubble where everybody is overwhelmed and feeling kind of covered in kind of work. And I just want to make sure that we're tracking that, and that they're supported, and that they know that we will deal with it if there is an issue. And I think that's been really heartwarming, actually, from all of this exercise, is the way that the team has responded.
Good. And you're doing more connecting with them around their mental well-being. Is that what you're saying, or there's an area of the firm that's dedicated to doing that?
Well, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. So if I minimise this screen, I'd have a great big thing telling me that it was Mental Health Awareness Week. And there's been lots of activity. Actually, our firm's really good at that kind of content of providing useful and interesting things to support each other. And our values are pretty straightforward and about being open and being yourself. But we do ask each other how we are, and in all of my catch-ups we have that conversation, and team meetings, what if any help do you need, that kind of thing. I think we're quite good at sharing that. Yes,
great. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for speaking so openly and honestly about what's happening. I'm now going to move, if we may, to the Q&A session, because there's been a few questions have come in, and if any of you who are listening live, I'm sorry we can't do this on YouTube, but if you're listening live and you would like to pose a question to Daryl and Barbara, please just submit it through the Q&A at the foot of the screen now, and I'll relay it on to them. But one of the things that did come in early was this view, and this is something I can really relate to myself, is how do you feel about getting back to the office, and when that will be? Now, I'm going to launch the poll now. Sorry for all these instructions, but I think it's important that we keep this interactive and we give you people who are watching and listening a chance to voice what you think. I'd like to ask each of you, when do you expect to be back working from an office? Now, some of you, and there's an option there to say, well, actually, I always work remotely. But with the rest of you, please select whether you're already back to normal working patterns when you think 50% plus of your colleagues will be back between June and August, or you think it's going to be September or later, or indeed, final option on the poll is you don't think there's a point this year when half the workforce will be back in the office. So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to vote on that while I ask Barbara and Daryl what their expectation is for Howard Kennedy. May I start with you, Daryl? Do you?
Dates. We're already looking at, as you can imagine, we've already started thinking about return to work. I think there are two audiences that we've got. There's the audience who are genuinely concerned and worried, and will be reluctant to be back at the office anytime soon. Yeah. And then there's another element. I think you just can't wait. Please get me back in the office. I've had enough. Because I think everyone's experience of the COVID lockdown will be different. Some people are well equipped at home with nice studies and desks to work from. Others, and including some of my colleagues, having to work out their bedrooms, which again is difficult long term. So it will depend. We've got a group looking at the return to work as we speak. The practical difficulties are pretty huge. Where we occupy a number of floors in a tall building, so you have to use a lift to get there. And so even if you think about how long is it going to take you to get all those people up to the 11th floor, it really practically difficult questions. So it'll be a phased return with all the various measures around one-way working, transport around the building, how to deal with vending machines, special arrangements for the loos. These are all really detailed, practical things which will take time. So I don't think anytime soon, but I suspect a phased return from July would be my guess.
Yes. Okay. And thank you, Barbara. Just before I ask for your views and where you sit on this, I'm going to share the results from the poll. Thanks to everyone who's just voted on it, and we had a clear leader. Quite a clear leader was saying that it will be September or later before half of their colleagues or workforce have returned. That's 51% of those who responded. While second, 26% said, actually, I don't think there's going to be a point this year when half of us are back in the office. Barbara, does that fill you with joy or concern?
A medley of the two. If I could go back to the office tomorrow, I'd be delighted, but I just wouldn't be delighted at the bit between leaving my house and the office. That's the challenge, is handling the commute, because for me, I can't use anything but public transport. So trying to manage that would be a bit of a challenge. Although I did manage to get to the office 2 or 3 days in a row without actually touching anything, as a bit of a game. Which involved a lot of elbow work. I think that it depends on people's well-being and their attitude towards it. I think there's a degree of agoraphobia that's developing, generally, about people are uncomfortable leaving their homes, and that is something that will have to be accommodated, this kind of cultural change. And the people who flourish, there's a few people I'm aware of who've really, really liked working from home. They find it more productive, they can concentrate, the things that might cause them anxiety aren't there. Yes. And I think that's something that's creating challenges and opportunities for us. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me. 50% in September, that 51% vote doesn't surprise me.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think it'll take a while myself. I must confess, please don't ring any hotlines, but I am having the second half day back in my office in Bristol, and it feels like this marvelous guilty pleasure of being able to get on a bike, wave goodbye to what used to be my loved ones, and then and come into a beautifully quiet office where all my colleagues are still working at home. But I think it's going to be very staged, and it feels slightly like an empty film set at the moment. One other question that's come in, if I may pose it to you both, from Tom Parkin. Tom asks, what kind of things are your partners and relationship leads now doing differently to manage one-to-one relationships?
Well, I can answer that first, and then Daryl, if you want to add to that. One thing I have found is that partners have been able to have the opportunity to take a step back. And I had a conversation before, it was my meeting immediately before this, with a partner to look at mapping his key referrer relationships and how he was going to do that, which systems were available. And he just wouldn't have had the headspace or time to do that exercise before now. Yes. And he's a specialist litigator. So that was really interesting. And I think there's that element of reflection and direction that people are taking. We've had a number of prompts at the beginning of the lockdown to remind people of different business development activity they could do, and the value and importance of keeping in touch with clients and writing to them and contacting them, and that kind of demonstrating personal empathy approach. And I think that people who might have been missed off a list because partners were too busy to cover them, they've been able to do more of that kind of client touch point activity, and that's something that I've noticed.
Okay. Thank you. I'm conscious of time. I'll if I may just pose another question that's just come in. Actually, is Daryl, post Corona, are you looking for different skills and strengths from the BD team? Do you see the shape of the BD team changing on skill set?
It depends to some extent on what post-corona looks like, obviously, whether or not we actually get back to where we were before. There's a lot of speculation about, have things changed forever? I suspect some things will change forever. The issue of, remote working, I think, again, is now a real possibility. People have displayed that in spades, that we can operate remotely. So I suspect we will get a number of permanent changes to work hours. The digital space clearly is going to be really important. Everything is digital, and so skills around that will be really important. But at the end of the day, this is a relationship thing, and so those people who are able to build relationships with partners and the teams that they support, they're the most important qualities, whether it's in person or digitally. I just think, for me, it's the people attributes that are the most important. So I don't think that will change.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. With it's flowing through. Thanks to both of you. One final light question I like to ask people who present on this is there. anything in particular you're really looking forward to as the lockdown is eased? Barbara, may I turn to you first, and then Daryl.
Oh, I think I was going to try and the immediate word that flashed into my brain. So sorry about this. Is Pret. I really miss Pret à manger. So you expect
Really?
their turnover to double when I get back.
Thank you. Daryl, have you got the same sandwich taste?
We always enjoy a drink in the office at the end of the month, and to get back to those would be really important, to sit and have a beer with the team, and I miss those, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, great. I can absolutely second that. Thank you very much. You've been absolutely excellent guests today, and thanks for everyone who's watching live and who's watching on YouTube. Next Thursday, we're going to be joined by Amy Kingdon of Barclay Research Group. So I hope you're able to come along at 2 p.m. next Thursday to hear what Amy's doing to navigate COVID. Thank you very much, Daryl, and thank you, Barbara. Good afternoon.
You're welcome.
Thank you.